Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere as always, and we're on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. So a lot of people don't know this, but Tags had a big birthday yesterday. Happy 25th, man.
Happy 25th. I wish it was my 25th birthday, homie, but I appreciate it. It was a good birthday, and I appreciate everybody on Twitter reaching out to me saying they listen to the pod and happy belated birthday and all that. So I do appreciate it, and if the Bears can get me a win tonight, it'd be a good belated birthday present.
I don't count on it, man. They'll find a way to blow it somehow.
Oh, shut up.
Hopefully you found yourself a way to get some Lou Malnati's, though, for your birthday.
I did not. I am on a diet. I've actually tried. I started intermittent fasting. Everybody tells me that it's like fantastic, and I lost like 5 pounds in the first 3 days. So I'm giving it a go, man.
Yeah, anything where you don't get to eat pizza, though, bad decision. Anyway, our guest today is Pat Fitzmaurice of thefootballgirl.com. He's always been one of the most accurate experts in Fantasy Pros accuracy contests, and you can follow him on Twitter at Fitz_FF. Pat, thanks for taking the time to talk some football.
Bobby and Tags, always great to be on with you guys. Tags, happy belated birthday.
Thank you, sir.
And Tags and I actually got to play a round of golf a couple of weeks ago, Bobby. It was fantastic. Neither of us quite brought our A game, but Tags pretty much did everything well except putted. He didn't bring his putter, but that was about the only thing I did well all day. So maybe I should have just been Tags' designated putter, but Tags can boom it, Bobby.
Yeah, I've played with him. He like takes a 9-iron and he's like, oh, it's like 250 yards. Oh, I should try not to hit it into the woods past the green.
I mean, Tags kept, like, on the front side, he kept kind of popping up his driver, and even his pop-ups go like 250.
Yeah, right?
I'm like, man, if Tags gets into one and hits it at the right trajectory, it's going to go a mile. Sure enough, early on the second 9, he crushes one, and it goes like, what, 310, Tags?
Yeah, it was like 308, 310, something like that.
He is a beast for sure. There's no doubt about that. But with him not eating pizza, I don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah, with me losing weight, I'm going to lose some distance on my driver for sure.
Yeah. So I did watch the film this morning, like every single play. And as much as I'd love to give every single take from yesterday's show, there just isn't enough time because we need to cover all the injuries, dive deep into the waiver wire. But there is one thing I have to share. Phillip Lindsey is so good, guys. He looks like Brian Westbrook out there. I think that Royce Freeman is overmatched.
Wow.
Yeah, I spent the better part of last week telling everyone that it was kind of probably a fluke. Lindsey was too tiny to have a sustained role, and now I feel pretty stupid. It looks like he's definitely going to have a sustained role of some sort, and, you know, I still think Royce is going to have a big role, but obviously Lindsey is not just like a one-week wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I think Freeman's going to get the goal line carries. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, yeah, it's going to cost you more than you would probably want to pay for Phillip Lindsey, but I'd go to try to trade for him before stock gets even higher because I think it's going to. I think this kid is really special.
Yeah, it's worth noting that Royce Freeman played just 16 snaps, 16 of 66 snaps against the Raiders this week. So that's not good. That's really not good at all. He's essentially turned into the two-down back that they're going to use in goal line situations, which it's going to affect Phillip Lindsey. I think both of them are affected by the timeshare, but they're definitely not going away from Royce Freeman. They're not going to like all of a sudden say, you know what, Phillip Lindsey, you're our three-down back, and we're going to have Royce on the bench. Like, I still think it's going to be somewhat of a timeshare here. But Phillip Lindsey obviously is doing more than I thought he would. Even as a fan of his out of college, I didn't think that he would be this good with that many touches.
All right, guys, let's get into the news. We'll get to injuries in a second, but Tags, you have some big news that broke right before the show.
I do. Ian Rappaport is reporting that the Patriots are close to trading for Josh Gordon. And by the time you guys listen to this, it may have already happened. So I think there's nothing more fun than speculating on a rumor. But if the Patriots are willing to trade for Josh Gordon, I mean, this is awesome, right? I don't see any other situation where his value is potentially higher. Going here, Pat, what would be your take? Let's pretend that the trade just happened, that they gave up a fifth-round pick for Josh Gordon and the rights to his contract. How would you view him going forward?
Yeah, so I've been basically throwing cold water on Josh Gordon and his supporters for the better part of the offseason. And, like, this is the one thing where I kind of have to reverse the position and think that, you know, at least wide receiver 2 value going forward. I mean, once he gets up to speed, like, I don't know if it's going to be instant. The only thing is, I mean, what kind of target share is he going to have playing alongside? And you figure it's probably going to be, say, week 4 or week 5 before he gets over whatever hamstring injury he has and learns the playbook and is ready to get significant snaps. By that time, Julian Edelman's back. got Rob Gronkowski there. Chris Hogan isn't going to totally disappear, and Tom Brady's always going to throw to his backs a little bit. So I think he can do a lot with the targets he gets, but there is not going to be a 10, 11 target a game ceiling for him. I think it's more like he's going to have to make the most of 6, 7, 8 targets a game.
That's a lot for someone like Josh Gordon coming from Tom Brady. I like it. Yeah, I've got him as a wide receiver too as well.
And we saw what Tom Brady did with Randy Moss a while ago, and while no one has Randy Moss's skill set, I mean, Gordon at least has the physical attributes that are, at least reminiscent of Randy Moss. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Where do you have him, Tags?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would actually, I'm right there with him in terms of I don't want to totally overvalue him and be like, oh, he's a wide receiver 1. Like, I don't see that happening. But the reason for optimism with Gordon is, think about it. He was on the couch, like, not doing anything. He was staying in shape, obviously. But when he came back to the Browns late last season, he didn't have a chance to learn much of a playbook. Like, he had to come back to the team. He played in his first week, and he played well at the end of last year.
Yeah, with Deshaun Kaiser passing to him.
Exactly, with Kaiser. Like, he's just a physically imposing, like, weapon. And the thing is they could be like, hey, we want you to go run a post route, like, not, this many times. And if I see you in single coverage, you're getting the ball. I see Tom Brady doing that over and over with Josh Gordon. And Brady has enough accuracy to put in the area where Josh Gordon, like the same zip code, where Josh Gordon is going to go over cornerbacks. We saw that in his touchdown in week 1. I mean, the ball was severely underthrown. He went over the corner, snagged it. It was a great touchdown. I like Josh Gordon as a talent. I really does. I hope this happens for his sake, because I think New England can help, whip his career back into shape and kind of keep him on the straight and narrow. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man.
And that probably means Dez Bryant to the Browns. I guess we'll find out what happens. Maybe he's just going to be a boxer, apparently. I'm sure he's going to be one of the guys we talk about here in this waiver wire show. We do have a couple injuries to talk about, though, mostly to running backs. LaShawn McCoy, we were thinking it might have been a broken rib. It turns out it's not broken. Now, granted, he said he couldn't breathe at all, which is not good. And a lot of times when they take these x-rays on your ribs, if it's a fracture, yeah, it's going to show up. If it's a crack, it doesn't show up. And then they figure that out after a couple days. I think he's going to end up missing a couple weeks anyway, just 1 or 2, really. But it turns out it was a crack in his cartilage in his rib cage, which is still, they say he's questionable for the next week. I don't think he's playing. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, probably not. And it's easy to avoid any sort of lineup dilemma with him, since he would be playing at Minnesota. I mean, even if there's any sort of questionable tag on him, I think you just kind of have to walk away from the possibility of using him this week. And, Marcus Murphy as a potential starter if McCoy is out. Generally, even in a tire fire of an offense, any starting running back is going to get a little attention on waivers. But boy, going to Minnesota and having that sort of potential game script working against you, and Josh Allen is a guy starting his second game in that sort of environment with the the dome and the loud Minnesota crowd. It's just, I don't know.
They should quit. They should just quit. I was asking them on Slack yesterday, everyone that we work with, what would happen if the Bills and Browns joined to form one team? Would they make the playoffs? Everyone said no, it wouldn't be much different.
It would be the Browns team
with a different coach.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I don't even know if that's much of an upgrade. But seriously, it's bad times in Buffalo, and I'm with Pat on this one. Like, LaShawn McCoy, I don't know if he plays this week or not, but I don't know why he would. Like, he's a veteran. I thought the Bills might explore a trade for him, try and trade him to a team that needs running back help that might be a contender, because LaShawn McCoy, he's on his final legs of his career. Like, why stick him out behind that offensive line, that offense? It's a disaster, but they don't have anybody else to step up. As you mentioned, Marcus Murphy, a former undrafted free agent, he's not going to get it done. They're 16.5-point underdogs this week. Like, I don't care if LaShawn McCoy's out.
16.5? Are you serious?
Don't even think about touching one of their running backs this week. Don't leave him on the waiver wire. Let someone else spend $1 or whatever. I would not take him for free.
McCoy should have just retired at halftime then.
Yeah, well, I mean, Vontae Davis did.
I cannot believe that story. Just amazing. Can you imagine being his teammate?
I would have been pissed.
Yeah. All right, Joe Mixon, guys, is going to be out a couple weeks. At first, it was seeming like it was going to be quite a bit more. Right now, the estimate is 2, maybe 4 weeks. Giovani Bernard is sitting out there on the waiver wire. He's going to be my top pickup. But, Pat, do you think that Joe Mixon is actually only going to miss 2 weeks, or is this the kind of thing that would make you really wary about him?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be closer to the 4-week timetable, and it wouldn't surprise me if it stretched out another week or two beyond that. So, I'm doing this waiver column for CBS Sportsline and was kind of trying to figure out what the bid on Gio should be this week. And basically, you try to set a bid where it's an honest enough bid to aggressively go for him without overpaying. And I was thinking maybe like $24 seems about right this week, because you're going to get a starting running back, versatile run catch guy in an improved offense. I mean, the Bengals look better. Their offensive line looks a lot better now that they've got the left side. I mean, Cordy Glenn has just really solidified things, and it might not be great if they lose Billy Price at center for a couple of weeks with his foot injury, but still, I mean, the offensive line is just miles ahead of where it was last year. They've got a good secondary receiving option now in Tyler Boyd. So, yeah, I think Gio could be a pretty valuable asset for like the next month.
He was the last 4 games of the season last year when he was the starter, right? I mean, he was a top 10 fantasy running back in those 4 weeks. One game against the Lions, he went 23 rushes for 116, 7 receptions and 52 yards in the same game. This is someone, Tags, who's shown he can be a workhorse. So just how much are you willing to pay for him?
I'm not willing to spend as much as you guys are on Giovani Bernard. In fact, if you have the money for him, he is my number 1 pickup this week, but I'm actually interested in picking him up and then trading him, because if you could find someone to give you top dollar for Giovani Bernard, do it. So the Bengals have kind of told us everything that we need to know about Gio, and the fact that they don't want him as a starting running back. Like, they've drafted 3 running backs in the top 4 rounds since he's been on the team. He's still not over his rookie contract. So it's just like the Bengals have kind of told us that, and they know that. When you see Joe Mixon out there getting like 85% of the touches on the team, they did not want Gio.
Phenomenal, man. Joe Mixon is so good.
Right, and that's the thing. Don't expect Giovani Bernard to walk in and be Joe Mixon. He's not going to be Joe Mixon. And this week they play the Panthers. The Panthers are a good run defense. I know Tevin Coleman had a solid game, but they're just not a team that... last year there was 1 game all year where they allowed a running back more than 17 PPR points. So Giovani Bernard at best this week is an RB2. And then some people... There's actually been some reports out there on Mixon saying that it was such a very small procedure that it's possible with the long week of rest that they had playing on Thursday, it's possible he only misses 1 game, but they're thinking 2 games max. I'm actually selling Giovani Bernard. If I'm able to get him, like let's say if you do a league where there's no fab, is he worth the number 1 waiver wire pickup if you have it? Probably, I guess, but I would turn around and trade him.
From what I understand about the Mixon surgery, it wasn't some kind of injury. He had loose particles in his knee that they just needed to clean up. So they just went in there, they made a little tiny hole in his knee, they pulled those out. The procedure apparently went well. I think he's going to be just fine. I don't think this is going to be the kind of thing where he has to come back and relearn how to run, regain his strength. It's just like they're giving him a big cut, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's where I'm at. I just believe Mixon's going to come back. He's going to take that job back, and then Gio's back to essentially nothing. Like, he was dropped in a lot of fantasy leagues. That's why he's on the waiver wire.
I like Gio. I like him for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's going to be. Because he was so good last season, I don't mind spending $25 on him, 25 fab bucks, 25%, whatever your league is. If it's $200, you spend $50 on him, just because this is what we're waiting for. Who knows if we're going to get another situation like this where someone can come in and be a workhorse. That's what he was last season. I think it's what he's going to be this season with Joe Mixon out. Now, finally, we need to talk about Dalvin Cook. Hamstring injury. Tags, I know this makes you nervous. We were talking before the show. I'm not nervous, though.
Well, you should be nervous if you own Dalvin Cook, and you should be kind of upset.
It was just a cramp, dude. Have you ever had a cramp in your hamstring? It sucks. It sucks.
They wouldn't call it cramp. They wouldn't say that. They would just say he's dehydrated. He had cramps. They said it's a mild hamstring tweak. It wasn't much, but here's the reason I'm worried about it. Because this is supposed to be the week where you are supposed to guarantee like RB1, elite RB1 production, right? They're playing the Bills, guys. The Bills, I was going through this. They've allowed, I think it's 21 running back touchdowns in their last 12 games, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the exact stat because I was looking at it earlier today. But it's like ridiculous how bad the Bills defense is. And here's the thing. Minnesota's at home, so it's very possible that the Bills don't score a single point in this game, which means the run script is going to be there. They might have 30 rushing attempts. But the problem is that if it's any sort of hamstring thing, like with him coming off the ACL, that same leg, they're going to play it so easy with him. And they have Latavius Murray there, who's a 3-down. Like, he could handle a big workload. You know what I mean? Like, he's been a starting running back.
Or Rock Thomas and Mike Boone, baby.
Oh, Mike Boone is not going to be active.
I know. I'm so sad, though. I wish he was.
No, but that's what I'm saying is just like I'm a little worried just because the matchup is like it's supposed to be so good and it's going to be impossible to bench him. But man, I really hope that he practices. If he practices throughout the week, obviously I'll be good with that.
Cook himself told NFL Network that it was a cramp, dude.
I don't know. Maybe he's just saying that.
Maybe he's lying. I don't know. What do you think, Pat?
I mean, I think it's probably going to be one of those affairs like we saw in week 1 with the Ravens playing the Bills, and the Ravens were just trucking them so bad they basically split carries evenly between Alex Collins, Buck Allen, and Kenneth Dixon. So we might see Rock Thomas get as many or more carries than Dalvin Cook, even if Cook's okay. And it wouldn't be a bad thing for the Vikings to play it safe, as you were saying, and just sort of, manage the carries very, very tightly with Cook. So, yeah, probably nothing. I mean, probably just an easy injury. But, like, hamstring, always best if you can give a guy a week of rest. And the Vikings can really afford to do that this week. So I think if there's any concern whatsoever, they might just shut him down for a week and, rev him up again in week 4.
I almost wonder if this is the kind of situation where you can afford to use Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray in a GPP lineup in DFS.
Ooh, interesting.
I mean, it worked. It worked so many times last year with Kamara and Ingram. The year before with Tevin Coleman, and it's weird that I'm saying Coleman instead of Freeman first, but Coleman looks like the better back right now.
You know, you're going to see Rock Thomas and some GPPs this week.
It's not going to be me. As much as I love Rock Thomas, I can't do it. Guys, we're going to move on over to the waiver wire here in just a second. We've already talked about a couple guys, but first I want to talk to you about NFL Game Pass. So every single Monday, I start my week by watching 4 hours of football. They've got these condensed games where you can watch each game in 45 minutes and see every single play, and that's what I've been doing. Only with NFL Game Pass, you can replay every game all season. It's NFL football anytime on your time. There were a ton of standout performances last week, like Patrick Mahomes, and even Sammy Watkins looked really good, which was surprising. With NFL Game Pass, you can replay all of them from every angle. There's this broadcast version, commercial-free. There's Coaches Film, which shows the all-22 angle the pros and coaches use. And there's the condensed games, like I mentioned. You can watch them in 45 minutes. Remember, with NFL Game Pass, it's game time anytime. Best of all, kick off the 2018 NFL season with a 7-day free trial of NFL Game Pass. Sign up now at NFL.com/fantasypros. Game on. All right, guys, so we already mentioned Gio Bernard is our number one guy. I don't know how anyone could argue with that. Pat, who is your number 2 on the waiver wire, though?
So if John Brown is unowned in leagues, I think he would probably be my next biggest target. I know in CBS leagues, he's only about 50% owned. So far, I think Crabtree has gotten a few more targets. I think 16 targets Crabtree, 14 John Brown, 14 Willie Snead. I don't think there's any question that Smokey is the foremost playmaker in the Ravens offense right now. Good enough to start in the flex spot, if not as a third receiver for a lot of fantasy teams. And I think he's going to be very playable against the Broncos this week, since he's probably not going to see a lot of Chris Harris Jr., since he usually lines up over the slot receiver, which means he's going to get Willie Snead this week. There was such a good buzz around Brown throughout training camp, and I think it's basically carried over to the first couple weeks of the season. They didn't really need him much in week 1, but he did show up big time in week 2 against the Bengals.
Tags, do you have John Brown number 2? I've got him number 3, but he's really close next to my number 2.
Yeah, no, I have John Brown number 2. Like, if you need wide receiver help, I mean, I wouldn't be mad at you for picking up John Brown over Giovani Bernard. It just comes down to your team and what you need. John Brown's not going to be I don't think he's going to be a weekly contributor, like someone that you could just stick into your lineup and expect wide receiver 2 numbers every week. I don't think it's rare to find players like that in fantasy football, to be honest with you. Look at guys like Robbie Anderson, who were drafted as wide receiver 3s, and people thought if he wasn't suspended, he's going to live up to that. Well, now I think he's seen 6 targets through 2 games. So it's difficult to find wide receivers who are very, very consistent. So to know that John Brown is going to have a little bit of inconsistency, that's fine. But the reason I'm so into John Brown, and he, by the way, in Yahoo leagues, he's only owned in 25% of them, which is just crazy. I tweeted that out before the Thursday night game. So it's not like we're just coming out and saying this about John Brown.
We've been talking about him for years, man.
John Brown's always been good, but just healthy. But the reason I like him so much is because the way that the Ravens are using him and the trust that Flacco has in him in the red zone. It's not even just like a deep threat or like, somewhere, 15, 20 yards down the field. He's getting into the red zone and getting touchdown looks. Like, he's getting targets in the red zone, and he should have had 2 touchdowns on Thursday. He actually dropped the one. It was a tight window. There might have been a hand on that ball, if I'm not mistaken, but either way, he could have had 2 touchdowns in that game. So the chemistry that we saw in the preseason has continued into the regular season. And if the Ravens defense struggles like they did against the Bengals, you're going to see more passing opportunities.
I agree, but I don't think it's going to matter much against Denver. I mean, I wouldn't start John Brown this week.
It's so funny because Michael Crabtree's going back to Denver, but Aqib Talib's not there, which kind of sucks. That would have been fun to watch. But John Brown is going to see more of, he's going to be on the other side of the field, not against Bradley Roby, but Chris Harris Jr. plays the slot. And then you have Bradley Roby playing left cornerback. He's took the place of Aqib Talib. So John Brown might have the best matchup on the field this week. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to go out of my way to play him. He's probably going to be ranked as like a wide receiver 4 in my rankings. But at the same time, John Brown, one play can make your week. It's rare to find a player like that on waiver wire who's getting, 5+ targets per week.
I have Kelvin Benjamin number 2, and it's similar. Like, you can't pick up Kelvin Benjamin and playing him against Minnesota, but he's the clear number 1 there. Buffalo's game scripts are going to be pass heavy all season because they're going to be playing from down for so long, so often. But week 4, they got Green Bay, Tennessee in week 5, Houston, Indianapolis, the Patriots in week 8. There is a string coming up where Kelvin Benjamin is going to be useful every single game. I want to add him now. And yeah, he's still out there in 40% of leagues, but if he's an option, he's the guy I want over John Brown and Chris Godwin, who's my number 4.
Oh, I don't want Kelvin Benjamin. Like, that is such a bad offense. Like, seriously, I was always of the mindset, like, at the start of the year, it's like, hey, he's the number 1 target in the offense. They're going to have to throw a ton because their defense is bad. But then you start watching and you're just like, why do I want to put this in my lineup? I don't think you'll ever feel comfortable playing Kelvin Benjamin. So I don't know, man. Like, I understand the thought behind it. I really do. But Pat, where are you at on Kelvin Benjamin? Like, if he's out there and John Brown's on the waiver wire, I would take Brown just because I believe there's more potential there on a weekly basis. And basically Kelvin Benjamin, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's bust.
Yeah, Bobby, I'm sorry. I was thinking along the same lines as you in the preseason, especially when, Josh Allen looked somewhat competent in some of those games. It's like a guy who can at least zip it into a tight window, which seemed like it would mesh pretty well with Benjamin's skill set, the big body, the guy who's not going to get a lot of separation. But yeah, seeing what the Buffalo offense has looked like and what the offensive line has degenerated into, I'm just not optimistic about like any piece in that, and I don't think I could feel comfortable starting him right now. I mean, maybe he does wind up being just far and away Josh Allen's favorite target. It didn't work out like that in Allen's first start, but it could happen, and then maybe there might be some interest. But right now, I'm not touching him.
Yeah, Casey Hayward was on Kelvin Benjamin for most of the game, which obviously is going to change it a little bit. But when you watch Kelvin Benjamin in the preseason, I loved him. I thought he looked awesome. I thought he looked like the best version of himself yet. He's been a wide receiver, too, for 2 years of his career. Last season was the exception because he was a little bit banged up. He got traded midseason. I think he's going to be just fine. So I like him. I'm glad people are dropping him. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love John Brown and Chris Godwin, who I've talked about a ton. I actually like Chris Godwin as a talent more than John Brown, but in the opportunity, not quite as much. So I have him as my number 4. Tags, where do you have Godwin?
Yeah, I have Godwin at number 4 behind Geronimo Allison. I actually have Kelvin Benjamin down at 7. I have him behind Calvin Ridley. I would rather take Ridley. I just feel like there's a better opportunity for him every single week. And if something were to happen to Julio, Ridley, this week I think we saw the Falcons offense and honestly I think it was a preview of what to expect going forward, because this Falcons defense, I know that they didn't allow tons of points to the Panthers, but they're this week they're playing the Saints. That defense is going to allow some points, and you're going to see Matt Ryan's pass attempts come up. Devonta Freeman is rumored to miss 2 to 4 weeks. Again, Calvin Ridley is going to be more involved going forward. So I do like him as a stash on the bench. I don't think you need to play him every week, but I think there's opportunities. But Chris Godwin, I like him, but it just seems like that team, man, is so stacked. And the fact that they've thrown, what does Fitzpatrick have? He has 8 or 9 touchdowns through the first 2 games. It's really tough to expect his production to keep going when he's had low yardage, but he's scored in both of the games, right? They have too many weapons. They have Mike Evans. Deshaun Jackson was back. He obviously looked good again. Adam Humphries is still getting playing time. OJ Howard is a man amongst boys. That dude needs to be playing. And by the way, OJ Howard, he's a tight end 1 for the rest of the year. And don't worry about Cameron Brate. I looked at the snap counts. OJ Howard more than doubled him this week.
Didn't Brate fumble this week too? I think that one's over, man.
Yeah, I think he was on the field for like 14 or 18 snaps. So Cameron Brate is done.
I've got Howard rest of the season as my tight end 8.
Nice.
So I would start him in almost every single matchup. Pat, who do you have as your number 4, or did we skip your number 3?
I would put Godwin there. And so I guess my spin on the Godwin thing is that, we talk about like run funnel and pass funnel defenses where, a team is so good at defending one aspect that other teams attack the other less powerful aspect of their defense. And I think with the Buccaneers, we're getting a pass funnel offense. I mean, they've got this shaky stable of running backs with Peyton Barber leading the way and, an offensive line that I think pass blocks better than it run blocks. And, I don't know if it can float 3 pass catchers or 4 pass catchers every week, but I think, Evans is going to be viable every week, and the other guys are going to show up at least often enough where you don't feel terrible about running them out in your lineup.
I think Godwin's the number 2, though.
He might be. I think on snap counts, I haven't seen the week 2 snap count for the Buccaneers, but Godwin played a lot more snaps than D. Jackson week 1, and the guy is obviously talented. So I'm kind of willing to buy in on this, and I don't know if I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be quite this effective throughout the entire season, but I do think they are going to have one of the craziest pass-run splits of any team in the league this year. And, maybe the Fitzmagic can keep going on play volume alone. Guys, why do opposing defenses keep falling for play action against the Buccaneers? That's what I want to know. What you're worried about a Peyton Barber 6-yard run up the middle, and you're gonna let D-Jax run past a safety who's cheating up to stop Peyton Barber? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because both of these teams that they played against were very good run defenses, and they're not good in the secondary. You would think they would just say, okay, we need to make sure Fitzpatrick doesn't throw for 4 touchdowns against us and we'll win the game. Now, of course, they didn't do that, so I have no idea. Can they just trade Jameis Winston already? Just free him, because I don't think he's getting this job back.
I don't know how to handle this, man, Pat. I don't think they could bench Ryan Fitzpatrick with the way he's played so far. I mean, if he bombs in week 3 and they have a reason to do it, but man, with the way he's playing, I don't see it.
I mean, he's out there letting his chest hair hang out, wearing Deshaun Jackson's clothes. The dude knows he is magical right now.
Oh, if you have not seen that interview, the post-game interview with Ryan Fitzpatrick, look it up on YouTube right now. It's
so
the best
funny
thing ever. It was so good. I love Ryan Fitzpatrick now. I want nothing for the best for that guy. That was so awesome.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. He went to Harvard as well. I just don't know, man. I mean, if Fitzpatrick keeps playing this well, they said, I don't think Winston is going to be our starter right away, but we've got plans for him in the future. What are they going to do? Play Fitzpatrick all season? Just let Winston rot on their bench? How much are they paying the guy? Oh, it's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So I've got Kelvin Benjamin, John Brown, Chris Godwin, 2, 3, and 4. I keep going with wide receivers here. Dez Bryant, number 5. Geronimo Allison, number 6. Pat, where do you have Dez Bryant and Geronimo Allison?
Yeah, mea culpa on Geronimo Allison. As Tags knows, we had a little back and forth on Twitter in maybe either July or early August about his value, and I just was not ready to buy in just because he's kind of slow. He doesn't have the best college resume as far as production, but he's a guy who's just gotten a lot better as a player since coming into the league, and I think working with Aaron Rodgers has helped. I heard an interview with him not long ago where he really credited Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb for sort of mentoring him when he was a young receiver. Very polished, I think, for a younger player, and he had a catch yesterday in the overtime against Minnesota that gave the Packers a chance to win on a 3rd and 8. He makes this tough catch over the middle, reaching down, plucking the ball 6 inches off the ground outside the frame of his body. Really impressive catch. I'm buying in now as a guy who's clearly earned Aaron Rodgers' trust and, is the 3rd receiver in a very proficient passing offense. I think Geronimo Allison does have fantasy value. I don't know if you're starting him every week, but he can be a valuable bench piece.
Rest of the season, I've got him wide receiver 38, which is about where I was drafting him. I had him wide receiver 41 going into the season. And Randall Cobb's healthy, so That hurts him a little bit, but he's looked good, and he's making all the blocks. He's going to stay on the field. Aaron Rodgers is awesome. So, yeah, I'd spend a couple fab bucks on him. So, we've got Kelvin Benjamin, John Brown, Chris Godwin, Dez Bryant, who we need to talk about, and Geronimo Allison. Tags, how much would you spend on all these guys? Would you spend 10 fab bucks on any of them?
I like Allison, but if he's still on the waiver wire, I don't think you need to spend it.
Yeah, I'd spend $1, and if you don't get him, so what?
I would spend more than that. I mean, if I had to, I'd spend $5 on Allison. But if he's still there, obviously know your league and know how they approach the waiver wire. But I'd be willing to spend $5 to $8 on Allison if I needed to, if I needed wide receiver help, because I think he's going to be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 more often than not. Granted, there's going to be some weeks where he lets you down. So this week probably isn't going to be one of those weeks to use him though, because they're going against Washington, who has Josh Norman at left cornerback. They don't use it. They don't do any shadowing in Washington. So Geronimo Allison runs about 70% of his routes in Norman's coverage. So it's not going to be a great matchup for him. So Devontae Adams might just go nuts on the other side of the field. So this might not be one of those weeks, but I think more often than not, you're going to get wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 numbers.
Yeah. So you've got Allison at what?
I am at 3 right behind John Brown. I think that's a similar territory where both those players, you're going to get wide receiver 3 numbers more often than not. I have Godwin at 4. I believe he's an upside play. I don't think he'll live up to those numbers that those guys do all the time, unless there's like an injury in front of him. And then I have Calvin Ridley at 5. Theo Riddick actually at 6, and there's an injury reported with him that I don't really know much about, but the reason I put him at number 6 was because I feel like he's streamable in week 3. They're going to be playing the Patriots, and if you know anything about the Patriots, coming off of a loss, they're probably going to beat Detroit pretty bad. They're going to need to use their running backs in the passing game. Theo Riddick is obviously that guy. Unless there's an injury, we need to pay attention to that.
I like Theo Riddick too. I've got him as my number 5 running back though. First, I want to talk about Dez Bryant before we get into some of these running backs. Dez Bryant is apparently, there hasn't been any news that he's going to sign with the Browns, but you would have to think with Josh Gordon being gone now, it's going to happen, right, Pat?
Well, and there's also been rumored interest by the Redskins, I believe. So I think it's getting closer to the point where Dez has his phone ring from someone. And, it will be interesting. After seeing Hard Knocks, I'm not sure why the Browns didn't sign him. It looked like Dez wanted to be there.
Well, the Browns are saying right now that they're not sure Dez wants to play football.
If you saw the Hard Knocks episode where he was in, he was very, just the body language, the way he was leaning in and his conversation with, Hugh Jackson and Dorsey, it seemed like he wanted to be there. So, and some of the Twitter posts he's had makes it seem like he wants to be there. So I don't know what the story is there. I don't know if they can get by with just, the trio of Landry and Rashard Higgins and Antonio Callaway, who I want to talk to you guys about in a second. But I, like you, have Bryant 6th on this list and think he is, worth a small speculative bid. I took him way back in the Scott Fishbowl draft in early July at wide receiver 50 or 51 or something like that. Just thinking the guy's not even 30 yet. I don't think he's totally washed up. He may have lost a step, but speed was never really the hallmark of his game anyway. So I still think he could contribute, and, it would be interesting if he did wind up on a team where he's needed.
Yeah, I'm spending $1 or $2 on Dez. Most of the time, I've mentioned this in past weeks, but in case you didn't hear those shows, I don't ever spend really anything in terms of fab unless it's a guy like Bernard that I can use right away. I know he's going to help me because I want to save all that money for whenever John Kelly is the running back or Rod Smith is the running back if one of these stars like Zeke or Todd Gurley gets hurt. So I'm only spending $1 or $2 on some of these guys. Gio, that's a different story if I need a running back. Another running back that might get a chance here, we already talked about LaShawn McCoy being hurt, and he's questionable, so he might play, but you think it's Marcus Murphy, Pat. A lot of people think it's going to be Chris Ivory. I agree with you that it's Marcus Murphy. Why do you think it's going to be him, and what can he do if he's the starting running back?
Not much, just because of the Bills' offensive line, and I probably can't give him an endorsement of being like a workhorse if McCoy is out. It's going to be some mix of him and Chris Ivory. Whether, Murphy is one or Ivory is one, I don't think it matters. I think they're both going to get used. I do tend to think Murphy is the number one, just based on the way the preseason seemed to be shaking out, God, I can't think of the last time I actually bothered to look at the Bills' official depth chart to see if they list
Why
them
would
that
you?
way. But so yeah, again, I mean, just a guy who's hard to get excited about. And right after they go to Minnesota and play, the tough Vikings defense, they then go to Green Bay and play a pretty stingy Packer run defense on the road. So I just can't get excited about either the Bills' backups.
He wouldn't start on any of my team, so I'm not going to pick him up. But if you need someone you can plug into the flex, I think Murphy has a better chance to be good. What do you think, Tags?
Just pick up like a wide receiver who's got a chance of catching a bomb, like James Washington or something. Marcus Murphy, by the way, has played 46 snaps this year. Chris Ivory, 16. So Murphy has been the clear backup to LaShawn McCoy, whereas Chris Ivory seems like he's going to be the goal line back. I seriously, and I mean this with all my heart, do not pick up these guys.
Okay. Now, you like Theo Riddick. Somebody that I like above Theo Riddick at running back is Corey Clement, because Jay Ajayi missed part of the game. Yeah, he came back, but maybe this is one of those situations where Ajayi starts practicing or he misses a couple practices, and they say, let's just hold him out. It's really not worth it to us. We're going to make the playoffs anyway because we're the Eagles, so we're just going to use Corey Clement, who looked pretty good when he filled in. Pat, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so it might depend on format. Like if it's full PPR, I might go Theo just because it looks like, man, the Lions defense is looking so bad. It looks like they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts this year, which could mean, an 80-catch season for Theo. But if it's half or standard, I think I'd rather have Clement. Man, he just looks like such a different guy. So I'm a University of Wisconsin grad and a big Badger fan. Obviously not a great weekend for me this past weekend. Clement is just not the same guy I saw when he was in Madison. Like, he looks so much better, and I think he ran some awful time coming out of school, and it looks to me like he's gone through speed training or something. He just looks so much quicker than he ever did in Madison. He's also fashioned himself into a decent pass catcher after really not being asked to do a whole lot of that in college. So the one thing that gives me pause on him is just seeing how much Darren Sproles was used in week one and how Clement just sort of got short shrifted in that Thursday night opener. And, with Sproles out, it was kind of easy to predict an uptick in his usage in week two. And then I guess Ajayi had some sort of very minor injury, came back into the game later. I like him if I knew he was going to get a significant number of snaps in this offense with that offensive line in front of him. Like, I'd feel pretty good about it. And pretty soon you're going to have Carson Wentz coming in to, further enhance the passing game threat and keep safeties out of the box. But I just don't know what sort of snap counts Clement is going to be seeing with Sproles, eventually coming back and it being sort of a three-way backfield.
Yeah. Carson Wentz is starting, by the way. He's making his season debut this coming week. Tags, who would you rather have rest of the season, Carson Wentz or Jameis Winston?
Carson Wentz. Not even close.
Really? You had Jameis Winston in your top 10 before he got suspended.
Yeah, and then before Ryan Fitzpatrick started playing like an MVP. Like, legitimately, Ryan Fitzpatrick, if the season ended right today, he should be the MVP.
Over Pat Mahomes?
Yep.
Pat Mahomes is going to fight you. I know a couple Chiefs fans who have been trolling me on Twitter. They will kill you.
Man, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, what he's done is nothing short of remarkable as well. Like, they'd be co-MVPs, if I'm being honest. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, nobody expected it from him. Like, that's why he's my MVP.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. So what do you think about Corey Clement? Any interest whatsoever, or would you just rather go Calvin Ridley, who you've mentioned, D.D. Westbrook, or maybe even Dante Moncrief?
Dante Moncrief. Blech.
I agree, but people have been asking me about Moncrief. Oh, by the way, he left the game with a knee injury, so Moncrief is a no-go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. He's a no-go.
Where are you guys at on Callaway? He's a guy who kind of interests me now that Gordon is out of the picture in Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's Tyrod throwing passes. If it was Baker Mayfield, I mean, Tyrod's not bad in terms of fantasy, but in terms of passing the ball, I mean, he went 15 for 40 in week one. If they have to throw the ball that much, he's not going to be all that good. Yeah, he prevents turnovers. He's fine for the Browns. But in terms of helping fantasy receivers, I don't really think he can support two unless it's someone as talented as Josh Gordon and Jarvis Landry. Plus, they got Duke. They got David Njoku.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, although I do think like Tyrod's skill set as a pretty good thrower of the deep ball, like that could really fit Callaway and his speed. So I'm kind of intrigued, and he did play like, I think 82% of the snaps yesterday.
That pass to Callaway was beautiful to win the game. Well, it didn't end up winning the game, but to take the lead with a minute left, yeah.
Yeah, and even with Gordon out of the picture, I did not expect Callaway to see that sort of snap count. So that was interesting to me, and it kind of, does give me, I don't know, a little bit of optimism that he might emerge as a, if I'm in a league with deeper benches, I wouldn't mind putting down like a $2 bid on Callaway if there's someone I want to get rid of and just kind of keep him around and see if something pops in the next couple of weeks.
I 100% I am on board with that, and I was actually surprised just with you that Callaway outsnapped Rashard Higgins because he was supposed to be the number 2, and Callaway actually played 4 more snaps than he did. He's operating as the clear number 2. The talent's there. If you're in a dynasty league and someone owns Callaway, they probably know what they have, but in case they don't, send them some feelers out there, see what you can get them for. Because once Baker Mayfield takes over, Callaway stock is going to go even higher because Tyrod Taylor's been awful to start the year. Like, if you guys haven't watched Tyrod Taylor, he hasn't been good. And I've actually been somewhat of a Tyrod backer the last couple of years, saying that he's not as bad as people want to make him out to be. I think he's a competent quarterback. He hasn't looked really competent. And I think losing Josh Gordon only hurts someone like him, because he doesn't have that go-to target. He really just doesn't. Jarvis Landry is going to struggle being the number 1 in an offense. Like, that's going to happen. So knowing that Landry is the number 1, Callaway is going to see some less than he's going to see some better situations. So I like Callaway.
So how would you rank Calvin Ridley, Dede Westbrook, Antonio Callaway?
Ridley, Callaway, Dede.
Okay, you don't like Dede? I mean, he's been getting the job done. Blake Bortles actually looked really good. Not just like, the game script depended on it, and there were a bunch of open people like, Pat Mahomes in the shootout, and he had like 8 yards of separation in every completion he made. Like, Blake Bortles was doing touch passes over people's heads. He was throwing bullets through windows. This was the best version of Blake Bortles I've ever seen. We saw this at the end of last year, too, until they just stopped giving the ball to him in the playoffs. They didn't have any trust in him. But now he's back. I don't know if you've noticed, Pat, but he's 4-0 with Leonard Fournette out of the lineup. They have scored over 30 points per game in that time. Is Blake Bortles better than we actually think?
No. Just no.
He's better than Mitch Trubisky.
Oh, stop it.
Maybe the flashes of competence come a little more often. That's it. Like, I'm not. I don't want to go overboard on praising Bortles, but he might be a guy who's better, like, when he is given more of a wide open game plan, and like maybe game management is just not his thing. But like when he's asked to run around a little bit and make plays, I mean, it almost seems like he's more comfortable doing that than being the guy who just, is asked to pick up the key 3rd and 5 every now and again.
Okay. Tags, we need to make a bet, man.
Oh, God.
This has been brewing for long enough. We should have just done it before the season. Okay, I don't know where they're at right now. I'm sure Bortles is beating Trubisky. I want the whole season Trubisky face Bortles in fantasy points per game.
Okay.
You taking it?
I'll take it.
All right. Winner buys the other person's golf round.
Bortles right now, I feel like we should start after this because you just got a Bortles performance. He's at 45.8 points. And meanwhile, Mitch going into tonight is at 14. Like, I'm at a severe disadvantage right there.
And you still want to do it, or you're saying start after week 2?
Do you want to start after week 2?
I don't care. I'm going to win either way.
All right, I'll take start after week 2. I think Bortles had his best game of the year this week.
Okay. We'll see about that. All right. Loser buys the other person's golf round.
Deal.
All right, man. So the bet is on. Guys, any other wide receivers or running backs you want to talk about before we go tight end, quarterback, DSTs?
Buck Allen.
Buck Allen's a good one, yeah.
Since there was much debate about Alex Collins on Thursday night on Twitter during that game and his value, and, it was just, the point was brought up that right now I think they've got the same number of touches. Buck Allen has actually played 4 more snaps, I think, but I also think the game scripts have been pretty wonky for the Ravens here the first 2 weeks with the blowout of the Bills. I don't know that there's that much you can read into it. And then, playing from behind most of the night against the Bengals after digging that big hole with the, early A.J. Green touchdowns, which, Tags sandbagged me with in the Chicago Media League. I'm not sure how much there is to read into that, but I do think Buck Allen has been kind of underrated in fantasy circles for a while. And, just with the shortage of playable RB2s and, flex running backs this year, I think he's a guy who I'm kind of interested in, especially if there's any sort of a PPR component to your league.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Theo Riddick, like Tag said, but I think Buck Allen's a good call. Tyler Boyd is someone on my radar. Anyone else for you, Tags?
Not really. Tyler Boyd was a name that, like, it's like if you're in a really deep league,
Yeah, I can't imagine ever starting him.
I agree. The rest of them are just like literally guys just to fill your bench, but there's nobody I'm really excited about after that.
Nyheim Hines has my eye as well. He's somebody that I would put on what'd you call it? Waiver wire speed dial tags.
Yeah,
I'm watching him. He looked pretty good. He looked awful in week 1 in the preseason. He looked pretty good this week. So, I mean, I don't know. Marlon Mack didn't look great. Maybe this is a situation where Hines ends up being the theoretic of that offense.
It's very possible. He could be the Darren Sproles of that offense. It seems like Frank Reich wants to use a timeshare, and you saw all 3 of them being used this week. So
I think he has to use a timeshare because they're just horrible.
I mean, they could have been easing Marlon Mack back into action after, missing all that time with the hamstring injury. So, I mean.
Yeah, he did have all the early work, and then they just slowed him down at the end. You're right.
For sure.
All right, guys, let's go streaming quarterbacks because there are no quarterbacks worth picking up. A lot of people are going to say, I got to spend $50 on Ryan Well, not a lot of people, but some people are going to be like, I got to go get Ryan Fitzpatrick or Andy Dalton. Those people probably aren't listening to this show, but, Pat, you want to go pick up. Neither of these guys are quarterback ones the rest of the season, right?
Oh, no, not long term. Although, if you look at Dalton's schedule, I mean, if you're in a pinch, if your starting quarterback goes down this coming week or whatever, like you could play him all the way up until Cincinnati's, I think they're by his week 9, maybe. Like there's no one who's a horribly daunting matchup. And, we talked about the overall improvement of the Bengals offensive line and just the offense in general. Now he's got some secondary weapons with Boyd and, a lid lifter in John Ross. I'm not chasing him by any means. Like I'm not paying more than, $1 or $2 for Andy Dalton, but he's actually a guy I think you could play a lot. And, I am starting him in a couple 2 QB leagues every week, and I don't feel too terrible about it.
I think Andy Dalton is a quality play the next 6 weeks. You're exactly right. But if I'm streaming, I want Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Steelers. I mean, I already talked about Mahomes getting those 6 touchdowns, and yeah, Mahomes does look a lot better than I expected, but he was also throwing to wide open players like every single play. I think the same is going to happen this week. I think the Steelers have the worst secondary in the NFL. I would pick on them before I'd pick on the Colts. What do you think, Tags?
I don't think they have the worst secondary in the world. They were down Joe Hayden this week, so that obviously hurt. Artie Burns, he was downgraded on Friday's practice report or Saturday's, so he may have not have been 100%. They have a young safety duo back there. They switched out the safeties from last year, so there's a lot of moving parts in that secondary, and obviously it just seems like, and I hate to say this because it's never happened, but Mike Tomlin seems to be losing that locker room. Like Antonio Brown, if you guys missed it, he tweeted out today. Like someone said something to him like, you're lucky that the Steelers drafted you and that you have Ben throwing to you. He's like, wrong, trade me, and like that with the whole Le'Veon Bell thing with, the offensive lineman talking out. I just feel like this team is getting separated, and now the defense is struggling. Antonio Brown's yelling on the sidelines.
Well, there was stuff last year like that too. Remember when Big Ben, whatever it was with the American flag, and people were mad at him in the locker room?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but they're playing in Tampa Bay this week, which means Ben Roethlisberger on the road, which means problems most of the time. But the Bucs on Monday night, I have no issue. And I haven't gone through my rankings just yet, but in terms of Fitzpatrick, I would assume that he's going to be a top 15 quarterback play.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing if Fitzpatrick throws another 4 touchdowns and 2 of them for 75 yards again. Yeah. It's crazy what he's doing.
Yeah.
Any other quarterbacks either of you guys would consider?
I mean, you could always consider Tyrod because he offers you a fantasy floor. Like I said, he's throwing like crap, but he still offers a fantasy floor because he uses his legs. The Jets are going to pressure him this week.
He's an RB3 and he passes.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And like the Jets, like the thing is like their weakest cornerback is Buster Screen, and he covers the middle of the field, which is where Jarvis Landry runs over half of his routes. So I do believe that they can, create a mismatch there this week. And I also think David Njoku should find the end zone. So if you're looking for a streamer and you can't get Fitzpatrick or Dalton, I think Tyrod's fine.
All right, let's go tight end here. Is there anybody that you like, Pat, or is it just whatever you can find?
It's ugly.
Yeah, O.J. Howard. I mean, we don't need to get too much into him because Tags already covered him earlier. But, there haven't been a lot of targets for him just yet. Only 6 so far, I think, through 2 games. But he still turned them into 5 catches for 150 yards and a touchdown. Yes, 75 yards of that came in one play yesterday, but I think the positive sign is that like Cameron Brate has basically disappeared from this offense. And, we've seen in the past that Jameis Winston seems to really like Cameron Brate, and Fitzpatrick just has no use for him. So now that things are looking pretty good for Fitz being the quarterback over a longer term, I'm diving in on OJ Howard. I like him a lot. And other than that, boy, it's kind of bleak. ASJ is just like so touchdown dependent. And granted, I think he's got a higher touchdown expectation with the Jaguars than he had with the Jets. Ben Watson hasn't really rekindled the chemistry with Drew Brees yet.
Should have had a touchdown. Brees overthrew him on a wide open red zone play.
Yeah, that's true. And in 2 weeks, Watson plays the Giants, which is, always fantasy gold for tight ends. So that's week 4. You might want to get Watson this week if you're a plan ahead type.
I'm looking at all the potential streamer defenses, like the ones we pick on, the Giants, the Dolphins, the Rams, and the Browns, and none of them have any tight ends like in my top 25 rest of the season, so I can't stream any of those guys. It's just whoever the best tight end is on your waiver wire, whether it's Jack Doyle's going to be out there in a lot. George Kittle's probably gone. Jared Cook is probably gone, but OJ Howard, maybe Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I'm not excited about it, but in some cases he might be the best one. And Bortles is going to target him because he likes tight ends in the red zone. So it is ugly. There really are not any options, Tags.
Yeah, no, Seferian-Jenkins is the one that I would have recommended. He'll match up with Kenny Vaccaro. He's been coming down to cover the slot. And over the last 3 years, he's allowed a 75% catch rate in his coverage. So he's quite a bit smaller than Seferian-Jenkins. So it should be a matchup that they could take advantage of. And especially if Dante Moncrief, if there's something going on with him and Leonard Fournette still isn't back, they need a red zone option. I think Seferian-Jenkins makes for a good streamer this week.
Okay. I'm not going to have him in my top 12 or anything, but all the top 12 are probably gone that I'll have this week, so might be your best option. Guys, let's talk defense special teams here before we get out of here. It's kind of an ugly scene as well. Like last week, there were some good options. This week, I'm not really seeing much. Pat, who's on your radar?
I think you could use either the Cleveland or the Jets defense in this Thursday nighter. I mean, Thursday nighters are always kind of discombobulated a little bit to begin with, and neither of those offenses really are to be feared. So in the Cleveland pass rush, I've been impressed so far. So yeah, I think you could use either of those teams. Dolphins with, I believe, a home game against the Raiders. Derek Carr was really sharp this past week. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen again. And the Dolphins defense looks pretty good. So that's another one I'd consider. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head. I know you're not streaming the Vikings. Unfortunately, they're already owned because everyone's going to want to get them out there in lineups against the Bills. We're picking on the Cardinals, but I think the Bears are pretty widely owned.
The Cardinals are so bad. I can't believe they've scored 6 points in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not good. I think the Browns, that's my defense of the week. I think the Browns and the Jets can be considered. The Browns are going to be at home on Thursday night. And the thing is like, think about this. If someone told you that the Browns were going to play against Ben Roethlisberger and Drew Brees to start the year, but allow 42 points in the 2 games combined, you'd have been like, wow, that's actually really good, especially when you consider Drew Brees at home. They have a young defense. Myles Garrett is going to match up with Kelvin Beachum this week, and that's just nasty, dude. Like, Kelvin Beachum doesn't stand a chance against Myles Garrett.
He's dead.
Yeah, Larry Ogunjobi.
And the quarterback's dead.
Came up this week, had a couple sacks. Like, that defense is better than people give them credit for, and this is the first time they're playing a not great offense. And the Jets so far, they've allowed 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 defensive touchdown. So it's a good matchup. The Browns are only 7% owned last time I checked. So yeah, get them.
Darnold was turnover prone in college last year too. So I think this is going to happen. The Browns are the way to go. I'd actually spend 2 or 3 fab to get them because after that, it is super ugly. And I think they're going to be maybe my top 7 or 8 defense this week, and like Tag said, they're available in almost every single league. Guys, there were a couple things I wanted to talk about here. I didn't mention Kenneth Dixon. I wanted to talk about him earlier. Apparently, he's got a chance to return already. Alex Collins is kind of in the doghouse. I know the game script wasn't really great, and it seems like forever ago that the Ravens played. But Pat, do you think Kenneth Dixon is someone worth picking up just in case he ends up getting this job?
Bobby, I've checked myself into a 12-step program for Kenneth Dixon enthusiasts, so I cannot do that. I'm only on step 4 right now, and I just can't go back there again. I've been there too many times.
Tags, what about you, man?
I think he's a bench stash. He's kind of like just someone like, I don't want to say Latavius Murray-esque, but I do think so because like the thing is if there's an injury to Alex Collins or if he's benched or whatever the case is, kind of Dixon has looked good when he's played in the NFL. Granted, he hasn't been healthy very much or been on the field very much to see much, but their offensive line is better than it's probably ever been. They have more weapons in the passing game than they probably ever have, or they have in a long time, I should say. So, I mean, I think he's just like an upside handcuff because I do think if he takes over that starting job that he would be like an every week RB2, RB3 type player. I think he would actually fill the Alex Collins role quite well, and I think he'd do it just fine. Buck Allen's still going to be involved, but it's just like one of those handcuff situations where you don't need to have him, but if you do, I don't hate it if you have deeper benches.
I agree. I think he's a good bench stash. I'd rather have him than a lot of the guys that people are going to be picking up. But with that said, I think we should be trading for Alex Collins right now. Alex Collins is a very capable back. The game script kept him from being, from showcasing who he is, and I think that you can get him for a dime right now. And this is someone who was worth a late third-round pick. I think that he still is.
I'm with you, man. I kind of think that just like you cannot go off these early snap and touch counts just because the Ravens have had two very weird game scripts in their first two games. And to me, he's just the same, mid to late running back two that he has been.
Now, sticking with the same team, we were talking about the landscape at tight end. Hayden Hurst is going to be coming back soon. He's not going to be practicing this week, but he's going to be back soon, and he was going to have a big role in this offense. Tags, I know you liked him. Is he somebody, if you need a tight end, you pick him up now and hope he turns into something eventually?
Well, I mean, we saw Mark Andrews, the rookie they drafted in the third round, I want to say. I liked Mark Andrews as a prospect, but being behind Hayden Hurst, it seemed like he was never going to get on the field. But they're using a lot of two tight end sets in Baltimore still. So, like, they're utilizing the tight end they have the last few years. I don't see any reason that Hayden Hurst, with the lack of talent at tight end, in the league right now, because when you look at your rankings for week 3, you're going to be like, you're going to want to throw up looking at some of the players you're going to have in your top 12. So Hayden Hurst is going to provide streaming appeal for sure, knowing that how much Joe Flacco targets the tight end position in the offense. But I'm always weary about players coming back from a foot injury like he had pass catchers. So that's my concern with him. And if he doesn't come back, I think Mark Andrews is slowly working his way to the top of that depth chart.
All right, finally, I've had so many people ask me this, Pat. David Johnson in this Cardinals offense. It doesn't matter if you're a superstar. In this offense, you can't do anything. So what do? Do you trade him now? Do you hang on to him and hope that he gets better? Maybe they go with Josh Rosen and the offense improves? I think the offensive line is such a train wreck. And we saw this in the second half of David Johnson's big year. He just wasn't that great in the offense. Yeah, he scored a bunch of touchdowns, but it's clearly not going to happen anymore. That's his calling card. Where would you draft him if the draft was today? I don't know if he's a first-round pick.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is my great dilemma because I'm in the league of all the leagues I play in, and there are way too many. The one that means the most to me is the 16-team league that I run, and I picked David Johnson with the 3rd overall pick.
Bummer. At least it wasn't Le'Veon, though.
I'm just ill with how the start of the season has gone and just how much trouble this coaching staff has had getting him involved in the passing game. Like, you'd think, Sam Bradford has been such a check down guy. Like, I figured this was going to work out pretty well with, Bradford freaking out about the pass rush and looking to unload to David Johnson, but they're just not getting him the ball. I do think there's going to be some sort of a little bit of natural bounce back. I think I've seen that the Cardinals have only run like 93 offensive plays so far, which is by far the fewest in the league. They're bound to get a little bit of, a natural kickback on that number, I think. And I would be very surprised if they did not name Josh Rosen the starter this week after what we've seen from Bradford. Just totally overmatched. Just doesn't look ready. So, gosh, yeah, I don't know if he would be a first rounder if we did a redraft today. Probably not. Probably a high seconds. But I'm still holding out hope that it's not going to be a lost season for him. I think he's just too good for this to continue. And, they've been getting trucked in a couple of games, so there's been no reason to leave him out there in the fourth quarter of these games where they're getting killed. I don't know. I'm depressed, but I don't think it's a total loss of value on David Johnson. And given how thin the running back position is, I mean, what else would you rather have out there? Like it's you're going to still throw him in your lineup every week.
Anything you want to add, Tags?
By David Johnson. trade for him because his stock will never be lower. I've had people in my mentions on Twitter today, and these are usually people. So on Twitter, it's different than most publiclies, where most of Twitter is usually a bit more level-headed, and they don't overreact the way the public does. So I know David Johnson can be had for really, really cheap. People are telling me that they're getting offers of Chris Hogan for David Johnson, and they're considering them. They're getting offers. They're getting offers of like Jay Ajayi or Carlos Hyde, and I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, so think about this, guys. Like, this is my moment to say I'm the one who talked you away from David Johnson before the start of the season. There were so many concerns that I was like, don't spend a top 5 pick on him. He's still a great player, but he's not worth a top 5 pick. But now we're to the point where it's like, don't undervalue what he's going to be. Mike McCoy needs to figure this out. Mike McCoy's a terrible offensive coordinator, but he's got to figure it out. He's going to get David Johnson more involved. They're returning home next week against the Bears. They're going to use him more in the passing game going forward. That's going to happen. I think Josh Rosen will be good for him to go to work. Like, they're going to need to figure out how to use him there because Larry Fitzgerald's old. He's dinged up. Christian Kirk is not a perimeter wide receiver. Chad Williams should have never been drafted in the 3rd round. David Johnson needs to be the focal point of their offense. And when you look at the running back landscape behind Gurley, Melvin Gordon, Saquon, Ezekiel Elliott, and Alvin Kamara, let's talk about what running backs you feel comfortable starting every single week. It's Kareem Hunt, and he hasn't even had a great start. Dalvin Cook, who's dinged up now. Leonard Fournette, who's dinged up. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he's not doing anything special outside of PPR formats. Jordan Howard, and that's it. That is legitimately it. So why are we talking about trading David Johnson away for 4th-round picks? Seriously, David Johnson, I am buying.
This is why I'm buying Joe Mixon right now, too, because the running back landscape is ugly. And when he comes back, Mixon's the man.
Yeah, I just worry. Like, that's the thing. David Johnson doesn't have an injury. He's still stupid talented. Yes, he's playing for a bad offense. He's not going to finish as a top 3 running back like some people thought, but he's still an RB1.
All right, guys, that's all for today's show. Pat, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thanks, guys. I always have so much fun coming on with you.
And thanks to the sponsor of today's show, NFL Game Pass. You can get a 7-day free trial of NFL Game Pass by signing up at NFL.com/fantasypros. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.